Section 2 of Brazilian Tales. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Leni. Brazilian Tales by various authors, translated by Isaac Goldberg. Section 2. The Fortune Teller by Joaquim Maria Machado de Assis. Hamlet observes to Horatio that there are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamed of in our philosophy. This was the self-same explanation that was given by beautiful Rita to her lover, Camilo, on a certain Friday of November 1869, when Camilo laughed at her for having gone the previous evening to consult a fortune-teller. The only difference is that she made her explanation in other words. "Laugh, laugh! That's just like you, man. You don't believe in anything. Well, let me tell you. I went there, and she guessed the reason for my coming before I ever spoke a word. Scarcely had she begun to lay out the cards when she said to me, 'The lady likes a certain person.' I confessed that it was so, and then she continued to rearrange the cards in various combinations, finally telling me that I was afraid you would forget me, but that there were no grounds for my fear." "She was wrong," interrupted Camillo with a laugh. "Don't say that, Camillo. If you only realized in what anguish I went there, all on account of you! You know. I've told you before. Don't laugh at me. Don't poke fun at me." Camillo seized her hands and gazed into her eyes earnestly and long. He swore that he loved her ever so much, that her fears were childish. In any case, should she ever harbor a fear, the best fortune-teller to consult was he himself. Then he reproved her, saying that it was imprudent to visit such houses. Villela might learn of it, and then— "Impossible. I was exceedingly careful when I entered the place." "Where's the house?" "Near here, on Guarda Velha Street. Nobody was passing by at the time. Rest easy. I'm not a fool." Camillo laughed again. "Do you really believe in such things?" he asked. It was at this point that she translated Hamlet into everyday speech, assuring her lover that there was many a true, mysterious thing in this world. If he was skeptical, let him have patience. One thing, however, was certain: the card-reader had guessed everything. What more could he desire? The best proof was that at this moment she was at ease and content. He was about to speak, but he restrained himself. He did not wish to destroy her illusions. He too, when a child, and even later, had been superstitious, filled with an arsenal of beliefs which his mother had instilled, and which had disappeared by the time he reached 20. The day on which he rid himself of all this parasitic vegetation, leaving behind only the trunk of religion, he wrapped his superstition and his religion, which had both been inculcated by his mother, in the same doubt, and soon arrived at a single, total negation. Camillo believed in nothing. Why? He could not have answered. He had not a solitary reason. He was content simply to deny everything. But I express myself ill, for to deny is, in a sense, to affirm, and he did not formulate his unbelief. Before the great mystery he simply shrugged his shoulders and went on. The lovers parted in good spirits, he more happy than she. Rita was sure that she was loved. But Camillo was not only sure that she loved him, but saw how she trembled for him, and even took risks, running to fortune-tellers. However much he had reproved her for this, he could not help feeling flattered by it. Their secret meeting-place was in the old Barbono Street, at the home of a woman that came from Rita's province. Rita went off through Mangueira Street, in the direction of Botafogo, where she resided. Camillo entered Guarda Velha Street, keeping his eye open, as he passed, for the home of the card-reader. Villela, Camillo, and Rita. 3 names, 1 adventure, and no explanation of how it all began. Let us proceed to explain. The first 2 were friends since earliest childhood. Villela had entered the magistracy. Camillo found employment with the government, against the will of his father, who desired him to embrace the medical profession. But his father had died, and Camillo preferred to be nothing at all until his mother had procured him a departmental position. At the beginning of the year 869, Villela returned from the interior, where he had married a silly beauty. He abandoned the magistracy and came hither to open a lawyer's office. Camilo had secured a house for him near Botafogo, and had welcomed him home. "Is this the gentleman?" exclaimed Rita, offering Camilo her hand. "You can imagine how highly my husband thinks of you. He was always talking about you." Camilo and Villela looked at each other tenderly. They were true friends. Afterwards, Camilo confessed to himself that Villela's wife did not at all bally the enthusiastic letters her husband had written to him. Really, she was most prepossessing, lively in her movements, her eyes burning, her mouth plastic and piquantly inquiring. Rita was a trifle older than both the men. She was 30, Villela 29, and Camilo 26. The grave bearing of Villela gave him the appearance of being much older than his wife, while Camilo was but a child in moral and practical life. He possessed neither experience nor intuition. The three became closely bound. Propinquity bred intimacy. Shortly afterwards, Camillo's mother died, and in this catastrophe, for such it was, the other two showed themselves to be genuine friends of his. Villela took charge of the interment, of the church services, and the settlement of the affairs of the deceased. Rita dispensed consolation, and none could do it better. Just how this intimacy between Camilo and Rita grew to love, he never knew. The truth is that he enjoyed passing the hours at her side. She was his spiritual nurse, almost a sister, but most of all she was a woman, and beautiful. The aroma of femininity, this is what he yearned for in her, and about her, seeking to incorporate it into himself. They read the same books, they went together to the theatre or for walks. He taught her cards and chess, and they played of nights. She badly, he to make himself agreeable, but little less badly. Thus much, as far as external things are concerned. And now came personal intimacies, the timorous eyes of Rita, that so often sought his own, consulting them before they questioned those of her own husband, the touches of cold hands and unwanted communion. On one of his birthdays he received from Villela a costly cane, and from Rita a hastily penciled, ordinary note expressing good wishes. It was then that he learned to read within his own heart. He could not tear his eyes away from the missive. Commonplace words, it is true, but there are sublime commonplaces, or at least delightful ones. The old chaise in which for the first time you rode with your beloved, snuggled together, is as good as the chariot of Apollo. Such is man, and such are the circumstances that surround him. Camilo sincerely wished to flee the situation, but it was already beyond his power. Rita, like a serpent, was charming him, winding her coils about him. She was crushing his bones, darting her venomous fangs into his lips. He was helpless, overcome. Vexation, fear, remorse, desire, all this he felt in a strange confusion. But the battle was short, and the victory deliriously intoxicating. Farewell all scruple. The shoe now fitted snugly enough upon the foot, and there they were, both, launched upon the high road, arm in arm, joyfully treading the grass and the gravel, without suffering anything more than lonesomeness when they were away from each other. As to Villela, his confidence in his wife and his esteem for his friend continued the same as before. One day, however, Camilo received an anonymous letter, which called him immoral and perfidious, and warned him that his adventure was known to all. Camilo took fright, and, in order to ward off suspicion, began to make his visits to Villela's house more rare. The latter asked him the reason for his prolonged absence. Camilo answered that the cause was a youthful flirtation. Simplicity evolved into cunning. Camilo's absences became longer and longer, and then his visits ceased entirely. Into this course there may have entered a little self-respect, the idea of diminishing his obligations to the husband in order to make his own actions appear less treacherous. It was at this juncture that Rita, uncertain and in fear, ran to the fortune-teller to consult her upon the real reason for Camilla's actions. As we have seen, the card reader